The year was 1867, and the Kansas air hung heavy with dust and judgment. Abilene's mail-order bride, Depot, stood like a relic of hope and humiliation on the edge of the tracks, its wooden sign faded, creaking with every prairie wind. Inside, the scent of iron rails and sun-baked sweat lingered, mingled with the perfume of dreams too fragile to endure. Mabel Thorne sat alone on the splintered bench near the front window, hands folded tight over her lap, her traveling dress wrinkled and stained from the journey. Her bonnet had wilted under the heat, and her gloves, once the pale cream of new beginnings, had darkened at the palms from worry and wear. She watched the last bride of the day laugh her way into a buckboard beside a lean farmer with sun-scorched skin. The couple rolled off toward the open prairie, two shadows becoming one. The depot door creaked shut behind them. Silence followed. "Reckon that's the last of him," muttered the station agent, a wiry man with a crooked eye and a gut full of chewing tobacco. He didn't bother to look at Mabel when he spoke. "No more men coming. Might be you'll need to head on back east, Mississippi." She didn't answer. Couldn't. The words settled like dust around her. She'd waited 3 weeks in this place. Watched 4 trains come and go. She'd seen 12 women claimed, some with trembling hands, some with tears, most with relief. Each time a new man stepped through the swinging doors, Mabel's heart caught like a snared rabbit. Maybe this one. Maybe he'd read her letters, seen past the photo, past the body the world could not forgive. But each man scanned the waiting room, looked right through her, and picked someone else. A group of boys had laughed at her 2 days prior, pointed fingers, whispered crude things as she passed the general store. "Fat cow waiting to be milked," one had snorted. She kept walking, heart burning, but the words clung like sweat. She'd been called many things. Big-boned, sturdy, unladylike. No matter how she held her shoulders back or tried to smile just right, her body was a battlefield others felt entitled to trample. Now, alone in the depot, that shame swelled hot behind her ribs. She stood, brushing her skirt with stiff fingers, and turned toward the door. Outside, the wind howled like it knew sorrow by name. The street was empty. The sun had slipped behind a bank of clouds, casting the town in a dull gray hush. Her trunk sat by the steps, one cracked leather handle, initials faded. It held all she had, 2 dresses, 1 worn Bible, a stitched handkerchief with her mother's initials, and a ribbon from a county fair she'd won for best cornbread in her village. That ribbon had once felt like a promise. Now it felt like a cruel joke. The station agent locked the door behind her. "You can sleep out back if you've a mind to," he offered, voice low, as if embarrassed to speak it aloud. "Ain't proper, but there's a cot in the storeroom. I'll tell cook to leave something out." She nodded, throat tight. The storeroom smelled of oats and mold. Mabel sat on the cot, back straight, eyes unblinking in the half-light. The lamp sputtered on the shelf, flickering against the crates. Somewhere outside, a horse neighed. Then thunder rolled in the distance. "Storm's coming." She stepped out to the back porch just as the first drops fell. The sky split with lightning, the kind that lit every corner of the plains for a heartbeat. That's when she saw the rider. He came up slow, the rain slicing across his silhouette like shards of broken glass. The lantern above the depot door caught just enough of him to show the outline of a long coat, broad shoulders, a wide-brimmed hat soaked dark with rain. He dismounted in one fluid motion. The horse snorted, muscles trembling with the scent of storm. Mabel stood still, her breath shallow. The man stepped under the awning, shook water from his coat, and knocked twice. The agent opened the door, blinking. "Ain't got no more girls left," he said gruffly. "I only need one." His voice was like gravel, soaked in whiskey. Low, measured, unimpressed by resistance. "There's her." The agent jerked a thumb toward Mabel without ceremony. "She's the only one what's not taken." The man turned and looked, not at her dress, not her weight, but into her eyes. For a long moment, Mabel couldn't move. He had a scar along his jaw, a hard set to his brow, but his eyes were the color of creek water, clear and searching. "Your name?" he asked. "Mabel. Mabel Thorne." He stepped forward, holding out a folded piece of paper. "I'm Beau Maddox. I need a wife. If you'll have me, I'll sign the papers now." The agent grunted. "You serious?" Maddox didn't answer, just laid a pouch of coins on the table. Mabel stared at him. "Why me?" she whispered. His jaw flexed once. "Because you look like you'd survive a storm. That's what I need." The marriage was done in 10 minutes. A deputy summoned from next door muttered the vows, hands shaking from the storm outside. When it came time to say "I do," Mabel hesitated, just a breath, a beat of her heart hammering against old wounds and new fear. But then she looked at Beau again and said it. He didn't smile, didn't kiss her hand, just nodded once and said, "We ride tonight." They set off into the dark, the thunder trailing behind like a judgment. The land stretched ahead in silence, except for the steady clop of hooves and the rustle of grass in the wind. Beau didn't speak. Neither did she. But her mind spun. Was this real? Had she just traded loneliness for something far worse? He rode like a man with ghosts behind him. They stopped near a bluff as the sky finally cracked open. Rain poured in sheets. Beau pointed to a thicket. "We'll shelter there." He helped her down, not roughly, but not gently either, like he was used to handling livestock, not women. Still, his hands were steady. Under the canvas of trees, they made a fire with dry moss and flint from a saddlebag. Mabel sat on a fallen log, her cloak soaked through. Beau tossed her a blanket. "Sleep. We'll reach the ranch by midday tomorrow." She looked up at him, her voice low. "Why didn't you wait for someone prettier? Someone younger?" He met her gaze. The firelight made him look older than he was. "My fiancée ran off 2 years ago," he said. "Took my brother's money and left me a note. Said I was too cold. Said I had no heart." Mabel swallowed. "I figured I'd try honesty this time," he added. "You looked like someone who wouldn't lie." Lightning flared across the sky again, but this time, Mabel didn't flinch. She wrapped the blanket tighter and lay down on the pine needles, the smell of smoke and wet bark thick in her nose. Sleep came slowly, pulled through layers of disbelief. In the distance, coyotes howled. She dreamed of a window without bars, a place where no one called her too much of anything. When morning came, she woke to the crackle of bacon and the hiss of boiling coffee. Beau handed her a tin cup without a word. The rain had passed. The prairie shimmered in the sun like gold beaten thin. She stood, stiff, every muscle aching. But something in her had shifted. She was no longer unwanted, and that terrified her more than being left behind ever had. The prairie opened before them like a vast, golden ocean, unbroken save for the dark ribbon of the trail and the pale spines of distant buttes. The morning sun climbed slow and hot behind them, casting long shadows of horse and rider across the dew-touched grass. Mabel rode stiff in the saddle, her borrowed blanket rolled behind her, the worn reins rough in her gloved hands. Her legs ached from the journey, her back sore from sleep stolen in the woods. But it wasn't her body that kept her quiet. It was the man beside her. Beau Maddox rode like a man molded from the land, loose in the saddle, silent, eyes fixed on the horizon. He didn't speak unless necessary, and when he did, the words came measured, as if weighed for value before given voice. Something about him felt carved, unfinished, a man with parts missing or hidden. They crossed a shallow creek by noon, its water clear and cold, cutting through the earth like a scar. Beau dismounted and guided her horse across by hand, boots sinking into the mud. Mabel watched him, trying to understand this man she'd married without truly meeting. "Why here?" she asked as they rode on, brushing her skirt free of brambles. "Why the frontier?" He didn't look at her. "Because the land don't ask questions. It only demands work." That was all he said for half a mile. The ranch came into view by mid-afternoon, a long valley nestled between 2 low hills, fenced in split rails and barbed wire. The main house was large but weathered, built from timber gone gray with age. A barn stood behind it, and 3 cattle sheds dotted the slope. Smoke rose from a chimney. A bell hung by the porch, still and silent. Mabel stared. The place looked like it had seen years of hard winters and longer silences. "You live here alone?" she asked as they passed the outer gate. "Used to," he said. "Used to." That opened more questions than it answered. A ranch hand met them at the corral, a young man with straw-colored hair and a wary set to his shoulders. He didn't smile when he saw Beau, didn't tip his hat when he looked at Mabel. "This her?" he asked flatly. Beau nodded. The hand spit into the dirt. "You didn't say nothing about bringing back a wife." "I don't owe you explanations, Eli." Eli's jaw tightened, but he said no more. He took the reins, led the horses away, and muttered something under his breath. Beau helped Mabel down. His hands were calloused and firm, steadying her as she found her footing. Then he motioned to the house. "I'll show you your room." "Your room, not theirs." Inside, the house smelled of dry wood, old smoke, and something faintly herbal, maybe sage, maybe memory. The parlor was bare but clean. A worn settee faced a cold hearth. A rifle hung above the mantel, and on a small table near the window sat a wooden box carved with initials, BM. Beau led her down a hall, past 2 closed doors, and opened the last one at the end. "This was my mother's room," he said. "It's yours now." Mabel stepped inside. Lace curtains hung over a narrow window. A quilt lay folded at the foot of a 4-poster bed. The wallpaper had faded in places, but the room was warm, lived in. "Thank you," she murmured. Beau stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then he nodded and left. She unpacked slowly. Her hands lingered on each item: folded dress, the fair ribbon, her mother's Bible, as if grounding herself in the familiar. But even as she tried to settle, unease clung to her. At supper, the table was quiet. Eli ate quickly and left. Beau barely touched his stew. "I'll be out at the north fence come dawn," he said as he stood. "You can sleep in. No expectations." Mabel lifted her chin. "I'd rather work." His eyes flicked to hers, unreadable. Then he gave a brief nod and left the room. That night, she lay awake beneath a quilt that smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. Somewhere in the house, floorboards creaked. A clock ticked soft and steady, and she wondered what kind of man married a stranger and said nothing of it to his own people. Morning brought frost and purpose. Mabel dressed in her work boots and one of the simpler dresses she'd packed, pinning her hair beneath a scarf. She found Beau near the fence line, hammering in a new post. His shirt clung to him with sweat, though the air still bit cold. "I said you could rest." "I'm not porcelain," she said. "Put me to work." He didn't argue, just handed her a spool of wire. They worked in silence for hours, save the occasional snap of wire or thud of a mallet. By midday, Mabel's palms stung and her arms burned, but she welcomed the ache. It kept the questions from catching up. Beau finally paused and leaned on the fence, his face shaded by his hat. "You ever build before?" "Raised chickens. Fixed the coop myself when Pa took sick." He nodded. "You're steady." The compliment startled her. She didn't answer right away. That afternoon, she explored the house. Found a locked room beside her own. The keyhole was small, brass tarnished. She tried the handle gently. It didn't budge. In the kitchen, she found jars of preserves neatly stacked. She started a stew for supper, hands moving by instinct. Cooking grounded her. It was the one place her size had always served her well. She liked food, not just the taste, but the way it could make people feel safe. Beau came in at dusk. He paused at the threshold, nostrils flaring at the smell of rosemary and beef. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "I mind bad food. This ain't that." They ate at the table again, quiet but less strained. "Was this your family's ranch?" she asked as she ladled stew into his bowl. Beau hesitated, then nodded. "My father built it. Died 5 winters ago. My brother took to gambling, and my sister married into town. Just me left." She sensed there was more, but didn't press. After supper, she washed the dishes while he smoked on the porch. The rhythm of normalcy was beginning to feel real, dangerously so. But that night, she couldn't sleep. The wind had shifted, bringing a new scent, sagebrush and something coppery beneath. Restless, she lit a lamp and stepped into the hallway. Beau's door was ajar. Inside, she saw him at the desk, shirt off, back to her. Scars ran down his spine like old battle lines, long, jagged, painful things. He didn't turn. "You shouldn't be up," he said. "I heard something." "You didn't." She stepped closer. "Those scars." He stood and faced her. His eyes held no softness. "Do you believe men can come back from what they've done?" he asked. She didn't answer. He stepped past her, out the door, and vanished into the night. The next morning, she rose before dawn, found a shovel, dug up the front garden's hard-packed soil. Her arms shook, but she kept going. She didn't know what she was planting, only that she needed to mark something as hers. By the time Beau returned from the fields, she was covered in dirt, hands blistered, cheeks smudged with sweat and earth. He stared at her. "You planning to stay?" "Already did." He came closer. "There are things about me you won't like. Things I don't speak of. I didn't marry you for peace," she said. "I married you for a chance." Something flickered in his gaze. Then he reached into his coat and handed her a small book. It was her letter, creased and worn, the corners softened by handling. "I read this every night before I decided." She opened it. Her words stared back at her. Honest, plain, full of longing. "I said I'd be loyal," she whispered. Beau stepped closer. "Then let me show you why that matters." He opened the locked room. Inside, the air was musty. A rocking chair faced a cradle. A dried rose hung from the windowsill. A woman's bonnet rested on the dresser. "My sister lost her baby in this room," he said, then left and never came back. Mabel moved slowly through the space. "You kept it the same?" She said it wasn't mine to erase. Tears welled in her eyes. "You built a life from loss." He didn't deny it. That night, they didn't speak. They just sat together in the parlor, fire flickering, silence comfortable at last. Mabel didn't know what the future held, but she no longer felt like a visitor in her own story. She was part of the land now, and the land, brutal and beautiful, did not give, only revealed. The wind came hard that morning, fast and sharp, dragging clouds across the sun and shaking the shingles on the Maddox ranch house like an omen. Mabel stood by the porch with her arms crossed, watching the horizon twist under that restless sky. She hadn't slept. Neither had Beau. Something in the air had turned, and both of them felt it like a nail drawn through raw cloth. 3 nights prior, a rider had appeared at dusk, dust-caked and narrow-eyed. He said he came from Clearwater. Said someone there was asking too many questions. About Beau. About the war. About the girl he brought home, like a secret wrapped in lace and silence. Beau hadn't answered, just handed the rider a flask and stared into the fire as if reading its language. Now, Mabel sensed the past was catching up, and it wasn't coming gentle. Beau strode from a barn with his rifle slung low across his back. His shirt was rolled at the sleeves, his hands stained with oil and dirt from fixing the corral gate. He looked like any rancher in the frontier, except for the haunted flicker behind his eyes. "What is it?" she asked, her voice hushed by the wind. He stopped at the steps. Men coming up from the south trail. Dust clouds thick. Too many horses for it to be friendly. Her stomach turned to stone. "They're here for you." He didn't deny it. "Who are they?" "Used to ride with them. During the war. After too. Robbed supply lines, guarded rail posts, stole from both sides. Then they started taking more than coin." His voice dropped. "I left. They didn't like that." She swallowed. "How many?" 5, maybe 6. Led by a man named Corbin Pike. Mean, smart, and cruel as a starved wolf. "You don't forget slights." Her pulse quickened. "We can run." "No. We stand." Mabel's jaw set. "Then I stay too." He looked at her, eyes deep and storm dark. "This ain't your fight. It is now. I'm married into it, remember?" That night, they made preparations. Eli, despite his prickly pride, returned from the north fields when he heard. Loaded shells. Reinforced the barn. Set traps along the back fence. "They'll come before dawn," Beau said, like ghosts. Mabel stayed in the parlor, polishing Beau's spare revolver. She'd only shot twice before, once at a snake, once at a hawk circling her father's hens. Both times she'd missed. But her hands didn't shake now. At midnight, she crept into the nursery. She didn't know why. Maybe to remind herself of what pain looked like when left unspoken. The cradle was still there. The dried rose still hung, brittle and brown. She whispered into the quiet, "Let me be brave." The storm broke just after 2. Thunder rolled across the hills like cannon fire, and with it came hooves. 5 riders, just as Beau said, shapes twisting in the rain, long coats flapping like crows' wings. They didn't shout. They didn't knock. They opened fire. The first shot shattered the porch lamp. The second struck the barn, and Eli cursed from inside. Beau ducked low, dragging Mabel behind the window ledge. "You shoot only if you must," he said. "Aim for center." "I ain't afraid," she whispered. "You should be." Then he was gone, out the side door, into the storm. The men circled, torches flaring, voices sharp as broken glass. "Beau," one called. "We came to collect, boy." Mabel peeked through the broken shutter. Corbin Pike sat high on a black stallion, his face gaunt and sun-leathered, eyes too calm for a man with murder on his mind. Two others flanked him, rifles raised. One wore a Union coat with blood still crusted on the sleeves. They were ghosts, all right, the kind that never buried their dead. She breathed slow, deep, raised a revolver, prayed she wouldn't have to use it. From the shadows, Beau struck first. One man went down with a cry, his leg clipped. Another fired wildly, missing everything. Beau rolled behind the trough, popped up, fired again. The thunder masked the crack of gunfire. Rain turned the dirt to red mud. Eli joined the fray from the barn, letting off 2 shots in quick bursts. A rider screamed and fell sideways. The others scattered, regrouped, howled like dogs. Corbin didn't flinch. He dismounted and walked slowly toward the porch. "You took from me, Maddox," he called. "Time and gold and blood. Now you hide behind a woman? Pathetic." Mabel's lip curled. She stood up. "He don't hide, and neither do I." Corbin stared at her, surprised. Then he smiled, a slow, mean thing. "So this is the fat bride, the one nobody wanted." She didn't blink. "Except the one who mattered." Corbin raised his pistol. She fired first. The shot went wide, but it startled him. He dropped to a knee, and before he could rise again, Beau tackled him from the dark. The 2 men crashed into the mud, fists flying, boots scraping. Mabel ran to help, heart slamming against her ribs like a war drum. Corbin got a hand around Beau's throat. Beau punched him hard in the ribs. They rolled. Mabel couldn't get a clear shot. Then Eli shouted, "Behind you!" Another man charged from the fence line, blade drawn. Mabel turned, leveled the revolver, and fired. The man stopped mid-stride, eyes wide, and fell. Her knees buckled. She dropped the revolver. Beau slammed Corbin's head against a rock. Once, twice. The man went limp. Silence. Only the rain remained. They stood in the wreckage, mud, blood, and smoke rising like ghosts. Eli limped toward the barn, cursing under his breath. Mabel stared at her hands. They shook now. Beau came to her slowly, touched her shoulder. "You all right?" She nodded. "You?" He looked down at the body at his feet. "I think so." They buried the dead in the north field. No word said. The law in these parts didn't ask for explanations. Just quiet. By morning, the sky had cleared. The wind was gone. The sun rose on a land scrubbed clean. Mabel stood on the porch again, watching the world return to silence. Beau came beside her. "I never wanted to be the man they remember," he said. "You aren't," she replied. "You're the man who stayed." He reached into his coat, pulled out something small, and wrapped in oilskin. Handed it to her. She unwrapped it slowly. A necklace, plain, with a pendant carved from bone. Inside, etched in rough letters, was the word hope. "It was my mother's," he said. "She wore it when Pa didn't come home." Mabel slipped it over her neck, fingers brushing the worn edges. Then she looked at him. Really looked. "You married me to keep them away, didn't you? So they'd see you had something to lose." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "But you stayed because I stayed," she said. Beau nodded. "And because you shot better than I expected." She smiled. "I aim to improve." They stood like that, side by side, watching the land breathe again. People would talk about the shootout, about the girl nobody wanted who became something more, about the scarred man who learned that roots grow deeper when they're chosen. But Mabel didn't care. The land didn't ask for perfection. It asked for grit. And she had plenty. So did Beau. They'd build something from the wreckage, not because they had to, but because no one ever expected them to. And sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is prove them wrong.